Greetings, schools. So I don't know if you heard, but we just got hit by a hurricane in my neck of the woods, and power's out. Not too much damage, cleaned up, a lot of branches, that sort of thing. But one nice thing about losing power and doing everything by candlelight is that you got no distractions, no internet, electricity. So one tends to pick up a book and read something a little faster than usual as well. So for the last 24 hours, and it literally took almost exactly 24 hours, I read this book called Kill Creek by, let's see there, Kill Creek by Scott Thomas. It was nominated for the Bram Stoker Award for Best Horror, and there's lots of starred reviews. You've got people like Joyce Carol Oates and others. I actually haven't heard of any of these other people, but Kaylee Marsh. J.F. Dubois, who wrote A God in the Shed. I haven't read that either, but it's Amazon keeps showing it to me, suggesting that I should. So anyway, it's I enjoyed it very much. I got a couple notes at the beginning. It's to give you the bare bones, if you'll pardon the pun. It's about four writers that are both famous in their field. One is a kind of Stephen King type who writes a lot about small time evil. One is this lady who's very extreme. Think Brian Lee or someone like that. And one is a kind of R.L. Stine character who writes a lot of teen horror. And the last one is a sort of distinguished gentleman of horror. At one point I thought he would be the Stephen King character, but I think he was just sort of doing his own thing, the sort of elegant, almost a throwback to, just some sort of old school horror writer of the past, like Sheridan Le Fanu or something. So the four of them end up accepting an invitation, as one does, and they've all got something going on in their lives to motivate them to accept this invitation, which is to be part of an interview that will take place in this house at Kill Creek, which is supposedly one of the most haunted in the world. And so they go, and what transpires from there is the substance of the book, substance of the horror as well. And I enjoyed it. I like spooky old women, and there's plenty of that because there are these two, the house is apparently owned by these two sisters, one in a wheelchair, the other one her caretaker. So if any of you have read or seen Pet Sematary, there's shades of Zelda there. I mean, I have to say, this book is very, very derivative of things that you've seen, but it's derivative in an interesting way. I notice that sometimes critics, if they enjoy something, they'll say, it's a wonderful love letter to horror and horror fans or stuff like that. That's all a veiled way of saying, at least in my experience now, of saying, yeah, all the ingredients are there that you've seen before, but they've been put together in a way that we still find entertaining. The big bad is definitely a sort of Zelda-like character, which I like because I have a kind of terror of spooky old women scratching their way across the floor. I have to say, one of the things I didn't like about the book was that it did seem a little bit as though it was, a lot, as though that it was written, intended to be made into a film. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but I could almost hear the dollar signs behind his eyes as he was writing. Another thing that I found a little bit strange was I wasn't quite sure the motivation of the main villains. And, and that's fine if it's Darth Vader appearing on, out of nowhere on board a captured ship and just being this towering figure of menacing evil, or the shape of Michael Myers in Halloween. We don't know anything about his motivations, only that he is just pure evil. These ones, they kind of told us some of the backstory, but it was just enough that I didn't buy the backstory, and not enough that it gave me a kind of satisfactory glimpse into why they were doing what they were doing. And it's yeah, I suppose that's okay. I mean, it almost seemed like there was just an overemphasis on scares toward the end, which was fine. They were well described. I liked it. I was very much able to picture what was going on, and I thought, oh my goodness, I would be absolutely terrified if I was in this situation. So I definitely give Scott Thomas props for that. One thing I did very much like, at least that I took away from it, I made a little note on it, is that in the beginning, one of the horror writers, who's sort of our lead character, Sam, is the sort of younger Stephen King type, but a bit trendier. None of them really fit. I would say Stephen King would be a mixture of Sebastian Cole, the older writer, and Sam, the younger writer. Sam's in his late 30s, shaved head, quite fit and whatnot. So he's not really Stephen King, but on the other hand, he's not the Sebastian Cole character either, at least in terms of physical description. But I'd say the two of them are an amalgamation, perhaps, of King, particularly in the style of writing, at different stages in their career, perhaps. No one's going to mistake T.C. Moore, the female character who writes, demon porn, for anything that Stephen King ever dreamed up, or the R.L. Stine character, whose last name is Slaughter. So, but what happens is in the very beginning, the author is talking about, he's giving a lecture in university on horror and popular culture, and he's talking about the Gothic tradition. And he says, well, what makes something in the genre of the Gothic tradition? He's basically setting up the novel. And as we'll see, this book is very much a Gothic novel with, a bit of a self-aware twist, as we have these four authors talking about what makes up a Gothic novel. So the first point is emanation from a single location. He makes a point that Nightmare on Elm Street does not have that quality, even though it's called Elm Street, that really the name Elm Street is just a kind of trendy, quaint juxtaposition with the word nightmare, and that there's nothing about the location of Elm Street that is within the Gothic tradition, that the horror itself does not emanate from Elm Street. I'm not sure I agree with him that much, because Freddy was haunting Elm Street, but the focus is on Freddy, not on the location itself. The location does not play a pivotal role in the horror that you find. It just happens to be a street called Elm Street. On the other hand, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the horror is very much centered on the house. Everywhere outside of the house is fine. This old house in the middle of, the backwoods Texas countryside, that's very much more a sort of Gothic idea. Number two, there's a sense of forbidden history. You could get that from Poltergeist, being built on a modern house being built on a Indian burial ground. Same thing as in Pet Sematary. That there's this forbidden history around the Pet Sematary itself. Then there's the idea of he mentions the idea of the illicit affair in a book I haven't read. I keep meaning to, but I find the prose impenetrable, is The Turn of the Screw. Third, atmosphere of decay and ruin, which is always physical but could also be mental as well. So you've got a broken down house, locale, but it could also be signifying the deterioration of one's mental state as well. You think of things like The Others and Hell House, for example. Number four, and finally, what makes a good Gothic novel is the corruption of the innocent. One person ensures the evil lives on. So, spoiler alert for Kill Creek, in a sense, but there's more to it than that. I would highly recommend reading the book. It telegraphs its ending. If you're paying attention, nothing is going to surprise you all that much, but it's a heck of a good ride. You can see, they go for the interview, stuff happens, they go in, then time goes by, and then they're drawn back to the house, and I'm sort of seeing things happening in steps. Then they have to go and see somebody, and then they have to go back and confront the evil. The basic steps are there. We've seen it all before, but as I say, I enjoyed it very much. 420 pages. I whizzed through it in a day. So go for it. I enjoyed it. And I hope I didn't give too much away, but on the other hand, it kind of tells you right in the first few pages what the structure of the novel is going to be like. So with that, stay ghoulish, my friends. Till next time.